Hey guys, welcome back. So today, as promised, I am sitting down to tell you all about my student teaching experience. If you searched for this specific topic or for whatever reason this is the first video of mine that you're watching, to give you some background information, I was an elementary education major and I graduated in December, so about a month ago. I wanted to do this as quickly as possible so that it was all still fresh on my mind and I didn't forget anything. So my student teaching was 1 semester long. I started in August and I student taught for 16 weeks or 4 months, and I graduated in December. So right after I finished student teaching, about a week later, I graduated. First thing I want to say is that your student teaching might be slightly different than mine. I've heard of shorter student teaching placements and longer ones. Sometimes it might be 9 weeks, sometimes it might go up to a year. It really just depends on your program's requirements for student teaching. For me, I had to student teach for 1 semester, so even though your time frame might be different than mine, if you are an education major, whether it be elementary, early childhood, secondary, special ed, at some point in time, more than likely, you will have to complete student teaching in order to get your degree. The only exception would be if you are getting alternatively certified to teach. So if you have a 4-year degree in a different area of study and then you are getting certified to teach, usually they don't put you through student teaching. So I was in a 2nd grade classroom, so I student taught 2nd grade for 4 months, and I was in that same 2nd grade classroom the entire semester. That is something else that could be different depending on your program. Sometimes they do split block programs where you spend like 8 weeks in one classroom and then halfway through you change and you move to a different classroom. So it really just depends on your university. So the semester before I student taught, I filled out my student teaching application and I was able to put my top 3 picks for schools, and then I got to put a few grade suggestions that I was interested in. So I think I got like my 2nd choice school and one of the grades I'd listed. So I was in a really great placement because it was like a few minutes from my house, so it was really convenient. But not only that, I was assigned to a mentor teacher that ended up being absolutely amazing. Your mentor teacher, or sometimes they call it cooperating teacher, is just whose classroom that you're in. So I had a really great mentor teacher. She was really experienced. She'd been teaching for 9 years. I was her very first student teacher, so she was nervous, I was nervous, but she ended up being great. She always gave me feedback. She was great at what she did, so she was a really great person for me to be able to watch and observe. And she was actually this year Teacher of the Year at that school. We just found out before we left for winter break. So she was phenomenal. And then you're also assigned a supervisor, and that is someone from the university. Sometimes it is an active college professor or a retired one, or sometimes it's like a retired teacher or principal or something like that. So my supervisor was assigned me and a few other student teachers in the general area, and she was responsible for coming out to my school about 5 or 6 times throughout the semester and observing me teach and interact with the students, and then evaluating me and then turning that information back into the school. She was also the person who I turned all of my actual work in. So my teacher work sample that I did, I turned all that paperwork into her. I'm very thankful that I had a really great mentor teacher and supervisor. They were really great at communicating with me and always gave me feedback and were there to help me learn, and were just really great supporters of what I was doing. I always felt like encouragement from them. And student teaching, what's scary about it is you are in that classroom with that mentor teacher for 5 days a week for 8 hours for 16 weeks, which is quite a bit of time to spend with someone. And if you don't mesh well with that person, it can make student teaching hard. But just remember that even if you don't get the perfect placement, you will learn throughout the experience. And even though it's hard in the moment, when you're finally done and you look back, you're like, wow, I have grown so much. I know that for me personally, looking back through the last 16 weeks that I spent in that classroom, I not only changed as a teacher, but I changed as a person. Even though looking back, I can honestly say I had a great student teaching experience, I still had some bumps in the road. It's gonna be hard. I'm telling you now, it's something you've never done before. It's different. It takes some getting used to. When you first start out, you feel kind of awkward in the classroom, but you'll hit your groove and you'll get it down, I promise. When I was looking back through the last 16 weeks, and even when I was writing my reflection paper at the very end of student teaching, I was thinking about what advice I would give to a future student teacher. So I took some notes and I wrote down some things that I wanted to share with you if you are going to student teach. These things are things I did really well, and some of them, if I could go back, I might have done a little differently. So I hope that this information helps you. So the first tip that I have is to, at the very beginning, set some goals for yourself. So when I first met my mentor teacher for the very first time, we sat down together and she asked me, what I was hoping looking to learn, what I felt like my strengths were, what I felt like my weaknesses were. And my big advice to you is to just be really open and honest with your mentor teacher from the very beginning. If you try to hide your weaknesses, you're in that classroom 5 days a week for 8 hours. She's gonna see your weaknesses one way or another. They will come out. So I sat down with her and I had 3 main goals that I wanted to work on. Mine were, number 1, my classroom management. I wanted to learn more classroom management procedures, especially at the very beginning of the year. One thing that I really like about my student teaching is I student taught in August, and I was there even from before the first day of school. I started student teaching August 17th, but the students didn't go back to school till August 20th. So I spent 3 days just attending professional development type things and open house and things like that. But I was able to see how the teacher actually set up procedures for the entire year. Things like, what do you do if you need to go to the bathroom? What do you do if you need to sharpen your pencil? What do you do if you have a question? Do you come up to the teacher's desk? Do you raise your hand? Are there hand signals? Like, do you cross your fingers if you need to go to the bathroom? Things like that. It might sound kind of silly, but those are things that I really wanted to see and I knew would be beneficial for me going into my first year of teaching, just being able to observe another experienced teacher do that. Not only that part of classroom management, but also how she handled behavior issues. What do you do if a class's voice level is way beyond yours? How do you bring them back down without raising your voice too much? So those were all things that I wanted to learn. The second goal that I had was to learn more about RTI, which, if you're not in the education world, RTI is response to intervention. So basically it is what the teacher does if a student scores below on a benchmark exam. It usually requires small group time every single day. So I wanted to learn more about how to handle that small group time while still managing the rest of your classroom. And then as far as the organization of that data, how to do that. And then my third goal was to learn more modifications for the classroom, not just for the students that are scoring below, but those that are scoring high. What do you do to challenge them? So those are my 3 goals and the 3 main things I wanted to learn. Of course, I learned so much more than that, but it really helped to sit down with my mentor teacher and describe my goals. And the second reason that I feel like it's important to have goals is at the end, it gives you something to kind of measure and to look back on. My supervisor asked me on the very last meeting, what did I learn from student teaching? So it was great to be able to refer back to those goals. And also, typically as a first year teacher, when you go to a job interview, they might ask you, what did you learn from student teaching? So to be able to have those goals to look back on, I think is really helpful. It also shows your mentor teacher and your supervisor that you're taking this seriously. You have goals in mind and you have really put some thought into your student teaching, and it's not just like, oh, I'm here to hang out. Hopefully I learn something. Next 2 tips I'm gonna kind of talk about together. When my student teaching was, said and done, I was talking to my mentor teacher just more as like a friend, and she said having a student teacher for the first time was kind of nerve-wracking for her as well, having this new person in her classroom all the time, especially because she'd been teaching for 9 years and had never had that. She was worried that either she would get a student teacher who just wasn't willing to work or do anything, or B, she would get a student teacher who came in there thinking that they knew everything already. So my second tip is to be flexible with your schedule. Just as a teacher in general, you have to be really flexible because things change all the time. You have so many things that come up, different assemblies and speakers, and you have to rework what you're going to teach all the time. So be really flexible and also be willing to do anything. The compliment that I got from my mentor teacher was that I was always willing to help out or teach whatever she needed me to teach for that day. Sometimes she'd say, hey, can you teach this? And I always said, sure, because even if you're like, oh gosh, I've never taught that before, I'm a little nervous, she's there to help you. So even if you fall flat on your face, she'll pick you back up. So I accepted anything she wanted me to teach and just thought of it with a mentality at that this is going to be a great experience regardless. So just be willing to do anything, even if it's something like running an errand or helping prepare materials or making a bulletin board for the hallway, anything. Just be willing to do anything and just take it all in. My third tip is to accept critiques. Something you have to learn to do as a student teacher is to accept criticism. And it's not necessarily bad criticism, but you have people that are evaluating your teaching and are there to help you learn and grow. And as a student teacher, you're not going to do everything perfectly. You're going to have some lessons that you're like, oh, that kind of sucked. But hopefully your mentor teacher and your supervisor will give you ideas on how to improve, or maybe something that you could try next time. So just always take that and be very open-minded. My fourth tip, and probably one of the most important things I will tell you, is to get to know the students. And I mean, really try to get to know them. It shows a lot of initiative when a student teacher takes the time to really get to know the students. What are their likes? What are their dislikes? What helps them learn? What do they struggle with? How do they learn best? Who do they hang out with outside of school? Who do you notice them talking to at recess? What are their home lives like? I mean, don't be intrusive, but I think it really shows a lot and helps you when you know more about the students. The way that you handle an issue that arises with Billy Bob is not the same way that you would handle it with Susie Q, because every student is different. As far as classroom management goes, there are students that are going to respond to different strategies when it comes to talking with them and handling like a behavioral issue. Not only that, but it means so much to students when you remember something special that they told you. I remember I would read with the students, like we would do group reading of our story for the week. And so instead of just calling on, you know, a certain student or a certain group, I would call on different categories, like read if you have blue on today, read if you are a boy or a girl or whatever. And I remember one time I said, read if you have a brother. And of course, the first time that I did this, all the kids were like, what about stepbrother? What about half brother? And I remember one little girl after had said, what about a brother-in-law? And so we'd had this little conversation about our brother-in-laws, because I have a brother-in-law. And then I remember a few weeks later, the next time that I had done that activity, I called on brother. And this time I said, read if you have a brother, stepbrother, half-brother, or, and I pointed to the little girl and I said, or, you know, if you have a brother-in-law. And her face just lit up because she just felt so special that I had remembered our conversation, and I remembered that she told me that she had a brother-in-law. So something as simple as that really means a lot to them. When you really get to know a student like that, it helps you so much in the classroom. Not only will it just make your student teaching experience that much better, but I believe that you'll have less behavioral issues in the classroom because it shows that you have respect for the students. And when you have respect enough to talk to them and show interest in their lives, then they will in turn usually show respect to you. Number 5 is to get to know the entire building. As much as you might feel secluded in this little classroom, take the time to walk around and get familiar with some other people in the building. You know, introduce yourself to the principal if you haven't already met him or her. I mean, the janitors, the secretaries, the people that work in the cafeteria, the other teachers in your building. There might be a time that you might really need their help. So just familiarize yourself with the entire building. My next tip is to go the extra mile and try to attend everything that you can. I tried to go to as much as possible just to get the experience. So open house, parents night, parent-teacher conferences. If you can set in on those, do it. It's so informative. So I went to parent-teacher conferences, even little things like one night we had a skate night. So at the local skating rink, it was second grade skate night. So every grade had a specific night, and the students would come that night. And I went to that and I rollerbladed with the students. There were some things that even I didn't go to that I wish that I would have. So I know sometimes your schedule just might not allow it. I was still in a college class on Tuesday night, so there are some things I had to miss. Not only does it demonstrate a lot of initiative, but it just helps you get the most out of your student teaching experience. If you have those opportunities to attend something, do it, because it's great then to, when you interview for a job, be able to say, hey, I attended this, this, and this. Another thing that goes along with that is, if you can, some student teaching placements might not allow this, but spend some time and go observe another grade. Not for an entire day, but just for one lesson or just for a little while. If you can get that opportunity to watch other teachers teach and observe their strategies, it's a really good idea to take it, because then when you interview for a job, you can say, yes, I student taught second grade, but I also, while I was there, observed third, first, fourth. My 7th tip is to be organized. I know, so cliche, but not only when you're student teaching will you be teaching, you will have other work that you have to do. So for me, I had my teacher work sample, and even saying the words teacher work sample, like, it makes my heart start racing, because if you've ever done one, you know that it is tough stuff to do a teacher work sample. Luckily, earlier in my program, when you take one of your methods courses, they make you do a teacher work sample so that when you go to student teach, you are familiar with it and kind of the setup of it. The good thing is it was split into parts, so I had 7 parts and I turned in one part like every 2 weeks. But they're hard and they're long too. Mine was like over 100 pages. But just be really organized about it, because if you can take some stress away from the student teaching experience, by all means do it. And there are some stressful things of student teaching that you cannot control, but organizing your stuff is one thing that you can have control over. So just be really organized. And also, if you get things from your mentor teacher, like if she, you know, provides you with any sort of resource for a subject or something like that, organize that stuff so you can keep track of it. And my last tip is to try to be really reflective of what's going on. Be very much present in the moment, and also take some notes. This is one thing that if I could go back, I would have improved on, and that would be to journal more and take more notes of things that happened. I know in some student teaching placements, that's one of your requirements, is to like write journals and stuff. We did write reflection pieces, but I wish that I would have taken more notes of things that were happening. And overall, my big tip is to just be really reflective. Like I said, in the moment it's stressful, but when you look back and you think about all that you've done, it helps to just really take in what you learned. So every day, just really reflect on things that happened. Sometimes it's good things, sometimes it's not so good things, but regardless, you'll learn from it either way. Alright guys, I know this video was incredibly long and I'm so sorry, but I had to condense 16 weeks of stuff into, you know, a video. That's a little difficult. But I really hope this was helpful. I know, like I said, when I was going into student teaching, I searched and searched for a video that would give me some tips and advice, and it's really difficult to find any. If you are student teaching, I wish you the best of luck. If you are just entering the education program, or you're a few semesters out from student teaching, if you need any advice or help at all, feel free to leave a comment. You can send me an email. My email is in the description box. You can, you know, tweet me if you want to, whatever's easiest for you. I am always here to help my fellow ed majors. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to watch. I really appreciate it. I do plan to do some more videos, maybe a little bit more about student teaching, more about my organization during student teaching, more about my education program in general. So keep your eye out for those if that's something you're interested in. If you have already student taught, or you're student teaching right now, feel free to leave some more tips and advice in the comments below to just help everyone out. I guess that's all for this video. Thank you again so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye!